All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ashley Shepard. I'm the athletic trainer for recreational sports here at VCU. And actually today we're sitting in my office. So behind me, you'll see a lot of different pictures. Throughout this session, you'll get a little view of what the office looks like, mainly whenever I go down on the floor for the foam rolling session. So if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, please feel free to have that type of questions available. So a little bit about myself. I have my bachelor's degree in athletic training with a minor in exercise science from Mercyhurst University up in Erie, Pennsylvania. I was able to obtain my associate's degree in psychology from Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my master's degree is in kinesiology with a concentration in exercise and sports psychology from SIUE, Littletown, Edwardsville, Illinois, out in Illinois. So I wanted to do this foam rolling session with y'all today because not a lot of people know about foam rolling. They know, hey, maybe I should foam roll. They might not know a whole lot about the concept of it, why foam rolling is essential, some of the things that go behind foam rolling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down foam rolling. What exactly is it? Why should we be doing it? What are the benefits of it? Some contraindications, some precautions you should be using while using it, as well as some different options. So if we're home right now, we might not have access to our own personal foam roller, and that's perfectly okay. You can definitely utilize some things around the house. I'm going to show you some different options on some things you can do, as well as some modifications you might be able to utilize as well. So behind me, you're going to see a picture of the muscular system of the entire body. And our muscles are separated into different groups, our upper body, lower body, our core, everything kind of in between. And so you can see that the body is broken up into these different muscle groups. And the reason they have this division and this little organizational system that they have is mainly due to fascia. So fascia, if you will, is mainly, imagine the spider web type of material you see around Halloween, right? It's a little bit sticky and it has this really intricate system behind it. And so what happens is you have your muscles and they're all throughout the entire body in different divisions. And this fascia lays on top of it like that spider web type of material. So what happens sometimes is that that material will stick down onto the muscle, and that might not seem like a huge deal at the time, but what happens is if you have this muscular system and this fascia that's on top of it, sometimes it prevents you from going through full range of motion. And if you do have a lot of adhesion in that area, you might actually develop muscle knots, trigger points. They're called a couple different things. Basically, there's a knot in your muscles and it feels almost like there's a marble under your skin. Very, very uncomfortable. You can get them throughout your entire body. And the only way to get rid of them is to kind of work it into the system, release some of that fascia, get the lymphatic system working underneath the muscular system. And so with that, we're going to go over a little bit of what a foam roller is, kind of the anatomy of a foam roller. So I like to go through with my students of why things are essential. Because if you tell somebody, hey, go foam roll and, do your thing, they might not know exactly what you're talking about. And so I like to kind of break it down a little bit more. So that way there's a nice understanding of why you should be doing this, why it's essential, as well as how to do it. Not a lot of people show you how to do videos, or there might be a little YouTube video of how to do your calf, how to do your bicep, those types of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the anatomy of a foam roller, a few different objects you can use around the house. If you don't have a foam roller, like me personally, I came down to the office because I don't have one at home. And then what we're going to do is we're going to finish up this video by doing a full body foam rolling session. I'm going to show you a couple little tips on what to do, as well as how to make it more comfortable for your body, especially in sensitive areas such as the spine, everything like that as well. Okay, so foam rolling. This is your stereotypical foam roller. Sometimes you might see nodules that are bigger or smaller, and those are important in your overall system of why you are doing what you're doing. So the nodules themselves, whether they're bigger or smaller, they do make a difference. And so this one I like because it's a medium type of nodule. It doesn't have the really, really big nodules in it. If it did have the big nodules in it, what it would do is it would dig deeper into the muscles and get a little bit more out of it. So sometimes, especially the ones with nodules that are really big, maybe 1/2 to 1 inch type of nodules, sometimes they get very uncomfortable for people, especially in sensitive areas that don't have a lot of fat or muscle in the body. And so sometimes they might not be the best type of situation for the individual. You might want to break that down into areas like the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads that have those bigger muscle groups, but not super sensitive, like around the sternum or the tailbone, everything like that. So I like to start off with a little bit of a medium nodule. Now, if your body is super sensitive, you might want to consider doing something with no nodules or very, very minimal. So here at the gym, if you've been to VCU before, we have the orange foam rollers out by the basketball courts. Those ones are very, very low nodule. Especially for beginners, it might be a little bit more beneficial for you. If the nodules are uncomfortable, easy thing to do, drape a t-shirt, a hoodie, a towel, something to go over it, and it'll give you a little bit more cushion on your muscles than just kind of digging into it, especially if you do have a lot of sensitivity in your skin or your muscles, everything like that. So foam rolling, couple contraindications or precautions that you should have before you start foam rolling. So if you are pregnant, obviously we don't want to go over the belly with the foam roller. And after the first trimester, you don't want to be laying flat because you're not going to get enough oxygen to the fetus in that case. So if we do have pregnancy, we can still foam roll, absolutely. Just avoiding the stomach area as well as keeping yourself in a nice flat area. We want to elevate the torso just a little bit, and you can absolutely foam roll. Some things you want to avoid, cancer patients or those with autoimmune diseases, just be careful going in those areas that are very uncomfortable and have those problem areas with a foam roller, because you will make things worse because you're bringing blood flow to the area and breaking things down in that area. Some other things, bruising. If you have a lot of bruising, you had an accident or something happened where there's an acute injury in the body, you definitely want to avoid foam rolling just in that area, at least until it heals up, because what you're going to do is you're going to hit the restart button on that tissue injury cycle, and you're going to notice the next day after foam rolling that area, the bruise is going to become a little bit worse. So you want to avoid any acute injuries while foam rolling. Open areas, so if you have a cut on your leg, just wrap it up a little bit and avoid that area until it has healed over. Make sure that the area is covered and that it has completely healed or almost completely healed in that case. You want to avoid areas that are very, very sensitive. So while we go over our session today, I'm going to show you a couple tips on how to avoid those areas that are super sensitive to the body, that are a little bit more superficial, as well as how to get a little bit deeper into the muscles. A lot of people think that you can just get the surface of the skin and the muscles. You can actually dive a little bit deeper by going into a couple different things that I'm going to show you. So those are a few things that you want to avoid with foam rolling. So if you don't have any of those issues, do not, pretty much you're good to go. So let's say we don't have a foam roller around the house, or it broke, we can't afford one right now. Do not panic. So simple, tennis ball. A lot of people use tennis balls because they are a little bit harder, so they're not super soft. And by super soft, I mean I have a racquetball here. See how I can squish it? It's not going to support my body properly. If you have a lot of areas with sensitivity, you want something a little bit softer, let's say at the ball of the foot, you can absolutely use this for people that have plantar fasciitis, or if you want an area that's super specific. So let's say you wanted to get into the bicep, having a foam roller is going to be a lot harder than doing something that is smaller, can get in those muscles, dig a little bit deeper into it. So if you want to, absolutely racquetball or some kind of ball that's a little bit squishier can be your best friend with that. If you want something a little bit harder, you can go into the tennis ball. So you're not able to squeeze it as much. You can put weight into it and it will support you properly. So worst comes to worst, you can use the tennis ball, as well as getting into those problem areas. So areas like the glutes, biceps, ball of the foot, if you want to get super specific into like calf muscle, or if you have a problem area in one of your bigger muscle groups, such as your bicep, or sorry, your quads or your hamstrings, you can definitely do that, especially on the back. Sometimes having something a little bit more specific is better for you overall than a traditional foam roller. So let's say we don't have any balls at home, perfectly fine. What we can do is water bottle. So this is green tea right now. You can use a traditional water bottle. So something that has a little bit of give to it, not a hard plastic water bottle, one that's a little bit more pliable, one you're basically going to toss in the recycling bin anyway. Little trick to these, the reason it makes it so cool is that you can actually freeze them and make it a cool foam roller. And so I suggest this to a lot of people that do marathon running or a lot of overuse type of injuries, because it'll soothe the body. It's going to have that cooling effect after you're done working out, but it's also going to dig a little bit deeper as it's bringing blood flow to the area. So you actually get a little bit of contrast with it, and you will see a little bit better results in the long run by using this type of thing. If you decide to go the water bottle route, perfectly fine. Just make sure fill it with something that's not carbonated, because then you're going to have an explosion in the freezer. It's not going to be fun to clean up. And fill it about 3/4 of the way up, placing it in the freezer, and then waiting about a day or so. So if you know you're going to do a long run or a long bout of exercise tomorrow, throw something in the freezer tonight, make sure it's nice and solid, and then you can use it absolutely. Having the water bottles are also good because they already have a little bit of ridges on it. So you're going to have a similar effect as the foam roller, but you can actually have it frozen. You can do it with a little bit of water in it. The more water you have in something, the more you're not going to be able to squeeze it, because that liquid inside is preventing you from going all the way down. So especially if you're a beginner, you can play around with these different tools. You can definitely go into specialty shops. You can go on Amazon, online, you can figure something out. Something similar to the foam roller is this little spiky ball here. I actually got this for free at a convention. I love it. So this is similar to the tennis ball, a little bit bigger, but it actually has those little bit of nodules in it that you can get into those places a little bit better, and it almost has a massaging effect as you're going into it and playing around with it. So that is a little bit about some tools you can use at home. The other one I have, especially if you're going to be moving this summer, this type of flexi wrap is going to be good because it has this cardboard center in the middle, and you can actually foam roll over it without having those nasty nodules, especially if your body is sensitive. So you can definitely have something a little bit smoother like this. Again, any of these options, you can throw a towel over just to have a little bit more comfort to your exercise routine. Either way, it's going to be perfectly fine. If you're new to foam rolling, play around. I always love to have people experiment with different things around their house, especially if you're trying to get a problem area, or if you're trying to be a little bit more conservative due to a lot of exercise. I offer a lot of different suggestions because of being home right now, but you can definitely play around with things around your house. You can utilize those different options for yourself. So foam rolling, why do we foam roll? How do we foam roll? Most important thing is, when do we foam roll? So not a lot of people know of when the proper ways to foam roll is. And so myself, I suggest doing it before and after exercise, because studies show that whenever you do it before and after exercise, you actually reduce you increase flexibility of your muscle, you increase blood flow before going into activity, but also you reduce the aspect of having DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. So we talked about that in my stretching video. Basically, you work out really, really hard, you feel okay. The next day, you feel like you don't want to get off the couch because your entire body is sore. That is DOMS. DOMS is basically just your muscle having a little bit of damage to it because you were working out so hard, and it's going to take a few days, anywhere between 3 to 7 days, to kind of recover from that intense session. So whenever a person is working out, I have a couple different tidbits, especially if you are super, super tight, you're working on your flexibility, all that good stuff. So first, I suggest having a little bit of a towel that's warmer, keeping that on for about 5 to 10 minutes, no more than that, because after about 7 to 10 minutes, your body's going to absorb all of that heat into your body, and you're basically just having a towel after that. So if you want to, you can definitely, if you don't have a heat pack at home, putting a little bit of rice in a bag, tossing it in the microwave for about 30 seconds or so, instant heat pack. You can also, worst comes to worst, have a towel, would dampen it a little bit, toss it in the dryer, and now you have an instant heat pack. So I love having those different options you can kind of play around with that are definitely cost effective as well as practical. You don't want to buy something, use it once, and then never use it again. So foam rolling. Whenever we are foam rolling, if you choose to do the heating route first, what that's going to do is it's going to be great, especially if you do have one specific problem area, because you're going to bring blood flow to the area. And once you bring that towel up, you're going to see the body is red underneath, or starting to get pinkish red. And what that's doing is it's opening your capillaries, opening those vessels in your body and allowing more blood flow to come to the area. It's getting more oxygen to the muscles themselves, and it's letting them breathe a little bit more. It's letting them relax a little bit more by that calming, heating effect. After the heating, I suggest foam rolling. And I do this for a reason, because a lot of people tend to have the debate whether they want to stretch first or foam roll first. So scientifically speaking, it's a little bit better to foam roll than stretch. And the reason is this. So remember those nodules we talked about, where they dig into the muscle a little bit, and it helps free that spider web type of material, that fascia. And what this is, foam rolling is a myofascial release technique. It's releasing that fascia from the muscles and allowing it to breathe and move more freely through that range of motion. And so by having that, the heating effect, heating is great. If you choose to do it, awesome. If not, no biggie. Going into foam rolling next is going to be great, because you're going to bring a little bit more blood flow to the area, as well as you're going to release that fascia. So let's say you were super tight to begin with. Foam rolling is a great technique to release that fascia. Stretching before and after a foam rolling session, especially if you are doing more static stretching or the PNF stretching that we went over before in the stretching video, all of those are going to help increase your flexibility and your range of motion in your muscles, which is going to be awesome. Then going into your daily routine. So making sure we stretch out real good. If you do the foam roller, awesome. Going through your daily activity. Then after, following up with static stretching. So if you need a reference for that, you can go over to my other video and look at a couple of examples for hamstring static stretching, as well as foam rolling afterwards. So foam rolling, some people feel like they need a half hour's session with foam rolling. Anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes is going to be perfect. So just fitting in that into your daily routine is going to be awesome for you. And so now we're going to go through a little bit of foam rolling. We went over the anatomy of a foam roller, some different techniques on how to use them, the different muscle groups that we're going to go over right now during our class utilizing the traditional foam roller. Like we talked about though, if you don't have a foam roller at home, these different options are definitely great, especially in a pinch. So let's head over to my handy dandy mat here, and I'm going to show you a couple different tricks on how to use our foam roller. All right. So if you do have a foam roller, I typically recommend you also using a mat. A mat is going to be good. You can also do this on hardwood. Carpet might be a little bit tricky just because you might have a little bit of friction with the carpet and the foam roller itself. So worst comes to worst, try a little bit harder floor, linoleum or hardwood floors, or you can just grab a mat. Either way is perfectly fine. When I usually do this with people, I start from, some people have preferences starting from the head down, feet up. Personally, I'm a feet up type of person because I feel like the bottom of the body is a little bit tighter than the upper body, because our legs have to support us all day, our core, everything like that. Versus the upper body, I tend to use things like the spiky ball or the tennis ball, because there are little bit areas that are going to be a little bit more sensitive, as well as the smaller muscle groups versus our big muscle groups that are in the bottom of our body. Okay, so we're gonna go over those different techniques, how to do foam rolling. So if you want to, you can start off with the spiky ball, tennis ball, any type of thing like that, and just go over parts of the foot. So personally, going over the arches of the foot, so on the inside of the foot here, just being sensitive because we don't have a lot of fat or the muscles aren't very big in this area. And so going really harshly will actually harm you in the long run. You're going to be very sore the next day, and putting weight on those muscles and those bones is going to be a little bit painful. So just going over in the inside of the arches, a little bit on the outside, as well as right down the middle. Just hitting all those little problem areas is going to help loosen that fascia up, that plantar fascia, which sometimes causes people a lot of different issues. Okay, so you can start off with the spiky ball. You can also do it with the traditional foam roller, but you're not going to get deep enough that it's going to make you have a significant difference with it. So after that, we start off with the calf. So the calf is actually broken up into two different muscles, your gastrocnemius and your soleus muscle. And so what we do is we start off right at the edge of our heel. And so what that is that Achilles tendon, and it's going to go up into that gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle. And so what I do, if you are a little bit sensitive, you can do one leg at a time just to kind of ease yourself into it. So all I'm doing is my hands are behind me just for a little bit of support. It's lifting myself up, so I'm just lifting my hips off the ground towards the ceiling and rolling back and forth. If you feel an area that feels like that marble we talked about, that muscle trigger, having an area that kind of pushes on it anywhere between 5 and 7 seconds is going to be good. You're going to feel a pulsing sensation and then a nice relax, and then just continuing on in that area. Okay? So my runners or athletes that have a lot of running in their sports sometimes have really, really tight calf muscles. If this isn't cutting it for us, we want a little bit more pressure on the area. Getting a little bit higher of a nodule in that foam roller could help, but also just crossing one leg over the other. And what that's going to do is it's going to put more weight on that foam roller. It's going to push the foam roller into those muscles just a little bit more. So you can do the traditional route. You can even do 2 legs at once if we're really short on time. You can kind of rock yourself back and forth, making sure you have nice stabilization behind you. So I typically recommend having the fingers facing towards the body and just rocking yourself back and forth. Or we can cross over, one leg on top of the other. The leg on the bottom is going to be the one that's getting that effects from the foam roller. After the calf, I recommend going to the side of the body. And so I'm on the outside of my leg now, and this is a group of muscles called the perineals. Perineals, sometimes you might not hear about them unless they're an issue, unfortunately. So the perineals sometimes get really tight during running sports because they're trying to support the ankle, especially if you don't have the strongest ankles with stability. Let's say you had a few ankle sprains in the past. The perineals sometimes get really tight because they're trying to support all those muscles. So first I start off with the calf, and then you just rotate your leg to the side, and then you can go all the way up until you hit that knee. So with the calf, going to the back of the knee, you don't want to foam roll over the back of the knee because it's one of those areas that doesn't have a lot of fat or muscle in it. That's where everything pretty much attaches. And you run the risk of hyperextending your knee at that point. It's not going to be real pretty. So rolling on the side of your leg, again, this is one of those little bit of sensitive areas because your fibula, your bone in that area is very superficial. So I suggest either having one leg down behind you or in front of you, lifting yourself up, and then going into a nice rhythm where you're basically going from your foot all the way to your knee. Okay? Once we get all the lower part of our legs rolled out, then we go to the upper portion of our legs. Upper portion, we're going to hit our IT band, which is the side of our leg. We're going to hit our quads, which are in the front, our hip flexor, which is in the front, but a little bit more towards our hips, as well as our hamstrings and our glutes in the back of our body. Then we're going to move up to our core and then our upper extremities. So starting off, I just go with the hamstrings. So like I said, not foam rolling over the back of the leg, but going from the back of the leg all the way up to where you're basically sitting on the foam roller at that point. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna be rolling out the most superficial of all the muscles, the glute max. Whenever you open your leg up a little bit, you can actually get the deeper muscles called your piriformis, which sometimes causes issues with sciatica, piriformis syndrome, all that stuff. So like I said, going from the back, supporting the upper portion of your body. If we have wrist issues, always doing fist for wrist. So you can push your fist into the body. Just make sure we have a nice support system and you're not putting a weight behind you all the way back here. Make sure it's a little bit closer to your body. All right, so going from the back of the knee all the way to where you're basically sitting on it. And same thing with the upper body, or the upper portion of the leg, then the lower body. You can always cross one leg over the other, just put a little bit more stress on it. Always pausing for those areas of trouble. The IT band. Sometimes the IT band causes us issues because it's really, really tight and we don't have a lot of flexibility in that area. So all we do, same thing that we did with the perineals, we're gonna do with the IT band. So just pushing ourselves to the side. Again, this area is gonna be a little bit sensitive. So either supporting yourself behind you. Personally, I like to go in front of the body just because it's a little bit easier to control and you feel like you're not gonna fall backwards. So personal opinion with that one. Going from this one all the way to your hip from the knee. And so that's the entire length of the IT band. It goes into that tensor fasciae lata, which is up near the hip. It actually goes in from the glutes as well. So you're working all those good areas. All right. So as we go into the glutes, like I said, basically sitting on the glutes, you can put a little bit more weight on one hip versus the other, or both hips or glutes are problem areas, you can just sit on both at the same time. Sometimes that might not be comfortable because your ischial tuberosity, which is part of your hip structure, is a little bit more superficial, might be a little bit uncomfortable. So personal recommendation, just lean a little bit of your body weight to one hip and then transfer it into the other hip. So we talked about how getting those deeper muscle groups is a little bit easier if you externally rotate your hips. So we're gonna show you how to do that. Basically a figure four. If the knee or the hip is uncomfortable in a figure four position, all you gotta do is just externally rotate yourself from here. Same thing, it's just not going to be as tough on the knees and the structures. So if I have my leg outstretched, just rotating it to the side, you're gonna be able to get a little bit deeper in those piriformis muscles. All right, so if we do figure four, it's gonna look like this. So we're just rotating and putting a little bit of weight, almost as if we're basically sitting and just rocking back and forth. Okay, so same thing with the other side. Transferring that weight, going all the way. Beautiful. All right, so now the problem area. A lot of people have trouble with foam rolling their back because what they want to do is they want to put that foam roller all along that spinal column. And the problem with that is your vertebrae, your spine, has these spinous processes on them that are basically going to be very, very sensitive because they're superficial to the back. So what you want to do is you don't want to foam roll right over the spine, or there's a couple different options that you can do. So instead of having our foam roller nice and horizontal, transferring it to vertical. So we're having it nice and flat here, and then you can just rock back and forth on it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So if I have my foam roller, I just support myself a little bit with my legs and my hands, and I can rock back and forth. Trying to avoid the spinous processes on the vertebral column of the spine. If that's a little uncomfortable, no problem. Go back to horizontal, so putting it in that natural foam rolling position, but just rolling to one side versus the other. And so you can do this that we did before, but if you go too far forward, you're actually going to hit your obliques, not your back. So you're going to have the side of your body, not necessarily your back. So let's say our lats are really tight. We want to hit our lats. You want to just rotate a little bit to the side of the body and then go back and forth on it, just like that. If we want to hit those obliques, what I recommend is lifting the arm a little bit, placing it behind you, and then having yourself with a little bit of support on the side of your body. because it's an area that sometimes is very sensitive because it's part of your core, you really don't want to go really, really deep with it because then you're risking putting a lot of pressure on those ribs. We don't want that. All right, so we did the back side of the body, and you can do that all the way to where you hit your scapulas, your shoulder blades. What I typically recommend is you can also do exercises with these. We can go over that in just a little bit. The hip flexors, we talked about the hip flexors. Sometimes people have hip flexor issues if they don't get a lot of flexibility in those hip flexors. So having the foam roller nice and horizontal, just like this, what we're gonna do is almost as if you were going to do a plank or a push-up position. And if it is too much problem on your core, you could also just be on your knees, or you can go straight up into a planking type position, okay? So what you wanna do is go right over where you stopped with the quads, and you're going to go just a little bit. This area is very sensitive because you do have your bones of your hips being right in that area. And what I recommend is going a little bit into spinal extension. And so if this is flexion, extension is going to have the back arching itself. It's going to open up that hip flexor a little bit because your hip flexors actually start in your spine and come forward almost in a V type position. So having yourself in a little bit of spinal extension is going to help open it up and expose that area just a little bit better because it is a little bit deeper of an area. Okay? So going in that type of position, just going all the way up, all the way down. Once we get into the upper body, like I said, I recommend a little bit smaller of a ball, and you can do everything that you wanted to do with foam roller, same thing with the spiny ball. This one is also great if you have trigger points on the back of your scapulas, your shoulder blades, because it helps dig in there just a little bit more, okay? So if we have problems going down onto the mat, whether it be knee issues, balance issues, hip issues, whatever, you can also do these right behind you on a wall. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a sec. So if I was just sitting against this filing cabinet here, it's nice and supportive. It's not going to fall over on me, which is good. I'm going to have the foam rolling ball behind me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm sitting up nice and straight with this. To open up your shoulder blades, put your hand behind your back, almost on the small of your back, and then just rock back and forth. What that does is it helps open your scapulas up a little bit more, and you can actually dig a little bit deeper into that area, which is going to help release a lot more of that tension. So just starting off nice like this, and then slowly going into your back, working your way up and down. You can also do this against a wall. Just make sure whatever you are doing against the wall, you have a lot of room that you can do this in, and you're not going to have pictures or furniture in your way because then it's going to be bothersome to you. If you want to do this on the floor as well, perfectly fine. I like to give different options for different individuals. Okay, so we just did our shoulder blades, avoiding the spinal column. We want to avoid that area because it is going to be very, very painful, especially having a surface like this that has those spines on it. It's going to interrupt your vertebral column. Okay, so you can also do your biceps, your triceps, as well as your pecs that same way. So like I said, whether you pick the wall or the mat, either way is going to be perfectly fine, and you're going to be doing the exact same thing anyway. So with the spiny ball or your tennis ball, racket ball, whatever you have, placing it on the area and just rolling it up and down. So triceps going from the back of the elbow all the way up into the shoulder. You can also go to the side of the body where you're going to be hitting your deltoids, everything like that, into the front side of your body, which is going to be your biceps, all that good stuff in the front side of your body. Make sure to avoid going into your actual shoulder. You have a bone there called your coracoid process. Very, very sensitive area, and you're going to know you hit it whenever you go, ooh, that didn't feel real pretty. So for this one, I recommend going from the triceps, so just going back and forth to the side of the body. So what you do is just start, open your arm up just a little bit, go to the side of your body, Then you can face the wall or face into the mat, going over the bicep area, avoiding that top shoulder because we're going to hit that coracoid process that isn't real pretty. From the arm, you can go into the chest, avoiding the sternum. So the sternum is the central portion of your chest, and you can feel it right basically under your throat. You're going to see this nice little notch, and then you're going to notice a very hard, prominent portion of your chest. You want to avoid this area because it is very, very superficial, very little muscle or bone or fat over it to protect it. So what you're going to do is almost like a butterfly. You're going to separate your chest into two different areas, cover this side and then this side, okay? Imagining your pecs almost like a triangle. So going in this area and then over to the side of the shoulder, okay? So whether you're doing this on the wall or the ground, just avoiding the central portion of your sternum is going to be your best friend with it. So going through and making sure that you're going in a nice pattern, as well as stretching afterwards, because doing this is great. It's going to free up into that range of motion. You want to help open yourself up, especially if we are at our computers all day where our shoulders are facing forward. You want to help open yourself up a little bit, free that area of any resistance that you're having with it. Once we hit the upper extremities, so we hit the triceps, the deltoids, the biceps, as well as the pecs, avoiding that sternum, then we're going to go into the neck. Being very careful, again, avoiding that cervical spine, which is in the back of the neck, but you can go on the side of the neck, which is really good. So you can do it with the foam roller, absolutely. You're not going to get as much out of it, but in a pinch, it's worth it. If you don't want to use that, you want to use the little bit of a ball, absolutely fine. Avoiding putting pressure on the neck because it is going to have a little bit more of an effect. If we have an anterior tilt, so what we usually have in the curvature of our spine is we have a lordotic curve, which means our neck is almost like a reverse C, if you will. If we have an anterior tilt, so our neck is almost facing and it has no curve, then what we can do is use that foam roller. We can strengthen the muscles in the back side of our body by pushing in with that foam roller. And what it's going to do is it's going to mimic that natural curve of the spine, and it's going to help support the neck and the head as we're doing these exercises. So like I said, you can rock back and forth. My favorite is saying no, so shaking your head no as you do it. And that gets a lot of tension out of your neck as well as the supporting muscles. It also helps support your head a little bit more. If we want a little bit deeper, getting that ball, putting it in the back side of your body, whoop, going away from me, there we go. And just rolling it almost as if you were shaking your head yes from the side of your body. You can also rub it manually, especially if it's uncomfortable. You can put a little bit lighter pressure in that area. So a couple different options in that case. The last thing I want to go over is using a foam roller for exercise. So a few different things. You can actually strengthen your adductors, the inside of your muscles, as well as you can get a little bit more spinal extension with your core exercises. So with core exercises, a lot of people tend to go flat on the ground, and then you have zero extension here. You can't force yourself into the ground. But what you can do is get that foam roller, putting it right in the back of your hips. And then what you can do is you have that little bit of extension now. So it lifts you up the ground a little bit, and it allows you to go a little bit into extension, putting a little bit of flexibility, and it's pulling on your core a little bit. And then you can go into core exercises, just avoiding the small of the back and rolling that foam roller like we talked about on the vertebral column. All right, the last thing we can talk about is the inner muscles, okay? So I have my foam roller just like this. Now my knees are right here. I'm gonna put the foam roller just above my knees because putting it right in the knees is gonna put a lot of pressure on the medial aspect of the knee, and it's not gonna feel really good. So you wanna be able to have a little bit more cushion on it. So that's why my knees are here. The foam roller is just above them, okay? And you can utilize this for a lot of different things. So the foam roller If you want to, you can just squeeze for a couple seconds. These are called isometric exercises. And what it does is it helps strengthen your internal rotators as well as your adductor muscles, so the ones in between your legs, without going through a whole lot of range of motion. You can also squeeze it as you are going in, and then that'll give you a nice little lower body, lower core exercise, which is sometimes hard to hit. And so what that'll do is it'll help work the lower portion of your abs as well as working your hip flexors. So if you wanted to squeeze it as you're going in, you're going to be able to do almost like a reverse crunch with it without putting a whole lot of pressure on your core because you're laying on your back, not facing the mat itself. Okay? So that is all I have for you with foam rolling, the anatomy behind it, as well as what you can do when it is a proper way to foam roll, how do you foam roll, all that good stuff. So I thank you for joining me this afternoon. I hope you catch a couple more of our sessions that we have here. The last thing I want to bring up, because I see I'm a little bit red here, once you go through these foam rolling exercises, you're going to feel like your body core temperature has increased, because it has. You're bringing that blood flow into the area, and so your body might look a little bit flushed. It's nothing to be concerned about. It's just you're increasing the blood flow to your body. All right, so I thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. If you have any questions or comments, I'm going to be here for about 5 minutes. But other than that, keep watching these videos. I'm going to have one probably once a week. If you have any recommendations, I suggest emailing me. So my email is BALL, so A-ball, the number 4, at vcu.edu. Especially if you have ideas or questions or anything like that, I definitely want to be able to help as much as possible. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Have a great rest of your day.